Taylor is a part of the Oregon Remembrance Project.
And we're here with Renee Browse.
And we are with Eddie Carrillo. So we are here with Michael Austin. Michael Austin is with Just Compassion. This morning with our special guest, Aaron Earlywine. We are talking this morning about immigration.
You know, I think to do this work, you have to have what I call unrelenting hope. And for me, part of that unrelenting hope is this belief that no matter where you go, you can find enough people who are willing to choose justice if given the opportunity.
And this is we end up dehumanizing people.
There is no greater determination of the value of life than the lives we are willing to take.
She said, I know what it's like to be hated. I know what it's like to be looked down upon because of who you are. And so I am here to protect you and to help give you support to know that you are not hated by everyone.
Welcome, everybody. I am grateful that each one of you are here for what we're calling the next conversation. And today is our special guest, Greg Harris. Greg Harris is the community outreach lead for CERT, which is a shortening of Community Emergency Response Team. Community Emergency Response Team. He is with us to talk about community emergency and how to respond to it, right? I mean, that's what we're doing today. And so this is a month-long theme about just preparedness and how to be prepared and what it means, what to do in preparedness. So if you remember last year, Renee Browse with ShelterBox led this conversation, and so this year we're doing CERT. So if you want to find out more about preparedness, you can look back in our archive on our app or our website, and you can find last year's talk and combine it with this year's talk because there's a lot of good information last year as well. A couple of announcements before we get started. There is a request that we have been given as a community, Cruise in Sherwood, which is on August 8th, and that is a Saturday. This is an all-day event on Saturday. It goes into the evening time, and there are different volunteer opportunities through the day. The reason why I say it that way is because we're not asking, or the call out for volunteers is not all day. It could be a 2-hour block, it could be a 1-hour block, or you can volunteer all day if you want to. They need volunteers for August 8th. Their main volunteer resource has had other plans, and so they are not able to last minute, be able to do what the community of Sherwood needs them to do. So we've been calling out, trying to find volunteers, and so if you are interested in that, even if it's for an hour, even if it's for 2 hours, Renee Browse, which is right here, she would be happy to help you get involved in that. Those of you who are online, we have a live audience today, and then what's happening in the kitchen of our brick and mortar room here over in the kitchen is Home PDX. Home PDX is something that we do once a month where we have people who bring food, people who cook food, and people who deliver and serve food in our downtown Home PDX community. This next Sunday is online only, and so we will have an online presentation this next Sunday because Amanda and I are celebrating our 25th wedding anniversary. And so we are gone. Bye-bye. We thought it best to do online only for next weekend. But there will be some activity that's put together this week. If you want to go for a small hike and have some lunch or something with the community, you can. There will be something scheduled, maybe just pickleball somewhere on the court and dinner afterwards. That's going to be discussed and decided next week. So what we're going to do is we're going to do our traditional 3 different blocks of talking and interview with Greg Harris. And then we will move in between, we will move to table talks. You're given little pieces of paper. Up on the screen, there will be questions up on the screen. So I think that disaster preparedness is something that communities don't necessarily talk about very often. And we as individuals don't necessarily talk about it very often. And especially in areas like we are in, like Portland Metro, we don't live in an earthquake like every week we're having it, our Sunday afternoon earthquake, right? So earthquakes, fires are like away from us, right? They're over there. Flooding, the most we get is rain. We have power outages and things like that, but we're not necessarily reminded every so often that there is a disaster awaiting us, or there's some emergency that we need to be, I don't want to should contract as we should be preparing for. I think though, preparedness, even in areas like this, we're taken off guard a little bit every once in a while when the ice comes. And all of a sudden we can't get out of our driveway and we live up on the hill, oops, right? Or maybe the power goes out, or we're preparing. We've never experienced powder outages. We have experienced other things. We have experienced COVID, where that was a disaster, and we obviously weren't prepared for that because the toilet paper ran out in Target, Walmart, and every other place, right? So we're not prepared for certain things. So I think strong communities are built. They're not necessarily built in crisis, but they are built intentional. Communities are built intentionally. And one of the intentionalities is preparedness. Now, I'm not asking us to be preppers. I'm not asking us to keep, 12 months of, flour for biscuits in the garage. That's not what we're asking for. We are just asking for preparedness when things go wrong or things go differently. What is our neighborhood? What are our neighborhoods doing? So I think this conversation definitely moves from just readiness to helping. This is how we can love a neighbor. This is how we can help our neighborhoods in general. So let's welcome Greg Harris. He is the lead for community outreach. And so Greg, you have been involved with CERT, Community
Emergency Response Team.
Thank you. This is going to be hard for me to read off over and over again. How long have you been involved with CERT? It's been a while.
I went through the basic CERT training in 2011, so I'm coming up on 15 years. Yeah.
And what is the role, like what is this role, community engagement? What do you do?
Well, my primary thing is, let me back up a little bit. Just a little origin story about what CERT is beyond just what the acronym stands for. Back in 1985, the Los Angeles County Fire Department was down in Mexico City helping out after a major earthquake happened. And when the teams came back and they were kind of debriefing, they had noticed how much of the search and rescue, how much of the response was being done by everyday ordinary citizens. And they realized that is due in large part to the fact that the professionals are very small in number when the entire area is needing help. So they decided they wanted to start training people in LA County to be kind of their force multipliers. So they created the CERT program and started training volunteers to have some basic skills in search and rescue, disaster first aid, fire suppression, and a few other things that are necessary following a major disaster. Now, CERT members are not professionals, they're volunteers, and the idea is they're the help until the help arrives. So this program became very successful in 1993. FEMA adopted it as a national curriculum, and CERT organizations started being developed all over the country. I'm a member of the CERT program in the city of Tigard. Every CERT organization is sponsored either by a city or a county, a Native American tribe, or some other group that serves as their governmental sponsor. And everybody goes through a basic training program, which is about 7 weeks long. And after that time, you can continue to be involved in, additional training or whatever, or you can just be there ready for whenever that disaster takes place. Now, in terms of community outreach, my role is to not go out and train, thousands more people to be the actual CERT volunteers, but to provide awareness of our program and also to kind of give them basics so that they're less likely to be the victims that need help. Right. So it's trying to spread, sow seeds that grow to make communities more resilient.
So I grew up in Los Angeles area, and when we were younger, earthquakes just happened, and so I realized before we scheduled this, and we were thinking about a topic all about preparedness, I realized that when I was younger, we were prepared in certain ways, right? So we had, when the power went out, we had oil lamps. That was back in the day. Some people would claim me to be. So we had oil lamps, and the oil with everything was prepared in these oil lamps. We had those big yellow spotlight flashlights, the school ones by Radio Shack, right? And then the big square batteries. I don't know if you remember those. Okay. But yeah, the big square batteries. So those batteries sat outside, right next to the flashlight, so they didn't get corroded, and they were wrapped. I think it was tinfoil or something like that. So we wrapped the batteries, and then we had water. We had different things that we were prepared for, but that was my grandfather, right, preparing us for those things. So he definitely was, a Depression era, type of prepared. But the earthquakes happened often enough, like I said in our intro, that we were reminded that we needed to be prepared. I would lay there at night, and I could always tell when an earthquake would happen or was going to happen. I would lay there in my bed at night as a kid, and it was very, of course, dark. But then all of a sudden it went very silent. Like there was like a silence, like an aura of silence. And then you could hear off in the distance the rumbling. And it got louder and louder and louder until it hit you. And you were always just a little bit afraid, right? Like, how big is this one going to be? And when the Landers quake happened, of course, that knocked out the foundation. And like some of the big ones where the freeways fell and such. That was a huge rumbling. But we were always reminded, right? Here, we're not reminded. Like there might be a fire in the gorge or out, in Sisters or whatever out there. But here we're not reminded. So tell us realistically, in this area, what should we be prepared for? What are the things that we need to be thinking about here?
Sure. Well, I think you hit on a lot of them, but part of the issue is what you're talking about. There's kind of this complacency because we don't have frequent disasters.
Right.
A lot of the ones that are likely to be an issue here are things that happen infrequently. The Cascadia earthquake is the one that most people that are in the emergency preparedness community use as kind of our baseline. It's like we are working to be ready for this when it happens, but it could happen tomorrow or it could happen in 50 years. And it's kind of hard to get people really psyching themselves up for an event 50 years in the future. So I like to think of the ice storms. Was it 2021? My neighborhood was without power for 8 days.
Yeah.
And that was kind of like a test. Did we have enough things in the house to eat, to keep warm, to keep lit during that period of time? So ice storms, wind storms, and the associated power outages is probably the thing that happens most frequently.
Right.
And whether or not that's a 2-hour outage or a multi-day outage can in large part depend upon where you are. And, did it just knock down a limb that took out the feeder line to your house? Or did a tree crash into the substation and take out the entire neighborhood? Those things vary greatly in terms of the duration of what you're dealing with. You talked about floods, and obviously that's one that is dependent upon where about you live. If you live near the Tualatin or Fennel Creek, that's more of an issue than if you live on the hillside.
Right.
I was here in 1996, and the floods were incredible. I was working out at Forest Grove at the time and living in Sherwood then. And when we were released to go home, there was one way for me to get from Forest Grove to Sherwood, and it was driving through 10 inches of water into banks and then getting up on Highway 26 and taking the freeway all around. Because other than that, every road was overflowing. So those things do happen. They do happen around here.
And it seems like we don't have, like the cities and the counties don't have the dollars allocated towards like the response of mitigating those things. So it's almost like when the ice comes, we just wait till it melts because there's no money to put towards those machines.
Right. If we lived in Colorado or Minnesota, we'd have fleets of trucks that were set to get out and plow and sand and take care of the roads. We just have to allocate the dollars differently because of the relative unlikelihood that those things happen.
So when you work with people, what are some of the threats that people underestimate? Like what are some of the things that you see that people forget about?
I don't know if people underestimate it, but I don't think people are aware right now with how dry things are, how a wildfire could be an issue, even inside of the city. We've had several fires recently. The railroad tracks that run through North Portland and sparks off of those lines will set the hillside below ablaze, and then those flames come up and over onto the bluff. That's a real issue for people living in North Portland. People who live close to what they call the urban interface, right? The urban wildland interface. People who live on Parrot Mountain, that's an area that, you could have a lightning strike up there, and all of a sudden you've got a 50, 100, 200 acre fire, and if people don't get on top of it fast, it could travel very fast and very far.
So we saw that in LA here recently, where LA is just one big city. So that fire that happened in the city, I mean, that was a city fire. That was not some, country, rural, like forested wildfire out there. I mean, that was like right in, the LA basin.
Right.
That gets pretty scary.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Totally. So we've met, we've interacted, we've sat in meetings together. Mm-hmm. So if I say something dishonoring to you, I'm really sorry. Preppers. So I don't know if you're a prepper, but that idea of a prepper comes with a certain stigma, kind of weird about it, right? So you're not asking us to be weird about this.
No.
Do you own a yellow vest?
Do I own a yellow vest?
Yeah.
I own a green vest because you're issued a green vest.
Okay. Do you have a hard hat?
I have.
Okay, so do I. I have a hard hat too. So I'm prepped for falling debris. So when it comes to preparing, not prepping, right? But preparing, how many days? Like when we think about an emergency and just lightly, we're taking a 30,000 foot view of this. Sure. We'll get in the details here in a minute, but 30,000, how many days do you think somebody in our area should be thinking about?
Sure. The current recommendation, and this is from the State Emergency Management Office, is 2 weeks. And the reason for that is if we do have some kind of disastrous event that really kind of overwhelms our first responder community, they're going to be deploying their resources on the theory of the greatest good to the greatest number of people, which means they're going to be focusing on hospitals, schools, senior care facilities. And if you live in a single family home, you're not going to get help for days and days. And so if you have supplies on hand to feed and keep yourself warm and keep your home lit for 2 weeks, that will give them a chance to take care of all those people in greater need, and also for additional resources to come flowing in from other parts of the country. So 2 weeks.
I do think, though, also that like the empty chair, like we set our table, right, the dinner table, and we have the empty chair for the guest, right? I do think that that idea of welcoming that neighbor and being prepared +1, like just thinking about that person, like the elderly person, I think about my neighbor that just might not have the skills or have the stuff in her house, so she can come to mine and be prepared. So I think, yes, and I'm just thinking about that +1, like how could we love our neighbor just a little bit, and it could be just a little bit more food or a little bit more, supply of some kind. Yeah,
That's a good point. And getting back to your mentioning of the term prepper, to me, one of the things that differentiates a prepper from someone who's just concerned about emergency preparedness and their community is
Right.
that willingness to reach out and be able to embrace their neighbors and bring them in.
yeah,
This isn't about, an earthquake happens, so you bolt the doors and you pull out your rifle and you're going
Right.
to guard your possessions. This is
I've
about
met people like that.
yeah. This is about the earthquake happens and you open up your door and you go start knocking on your neighbor's doors to see who needs help.
Yeah, I think that it is about our neighborhood. We need to look at the person, across the street. And we're going to get into that, looking at neighbors and communities. That's our next section. But I think prepping is more just self-sustaining versus just looking at how we can just reach across and help another person.
Absolutely.
So we have the idea of, maybe a go bag. We have the Colleen had talked about once having that go bag with all the important things in it, right? Like that bag that we could just grab and go. I think that's an important preparation thing. I think when it crossed the line, I had a relative that, is in my direct parental, oversight. I had a relative once that their trunk, my dad, their trunk was full of just in case. And it had guns, it had food, it had rope, and he drove around with that in the back of the car. So I think that there's a fear-based and then there's an intentionality and getting out of the fear-based, because that's just a reaction.
Yeah.
And you probably don't have the things in your trunk that you actually need when you're fear-based. You have just a lot more stuff that you're clinging onto.
Yeah.
Is there any myths that we need to break? That's kind of a myth that I need to have everything.
I think it's impossible to have everything. I think what you need to embrace is the idea of flexibility in your plans. In some disasters, you need to stay put. We'll take the pandemic, for example. We were all told to stay home.
Right.
If there's a wildfire, you may be told that you need to leave.
Right. Yeah.
And so this isn't about having one set of plans that works for every disaster. It's flexibility, and it's being able to kind of think on your feet and decide what are the important things. If you do have to leave, do you have the family heirlooms that you don't want to lose in a fire or whatever, and being able to have that stuff ready to go. That doesn't mean you leave all your family photo albums in a satchel by the front door always. But if you've got a go bag, maybe you have a note posted to it of the things you want to make sure you grab, because when you're in kind of a crisis mode, you're not going to be thinking clearly and spending a little bit of time in advance saying, I want to make sure I grab my wedding photos or whatever it is.
Right.
And maybe also put where those are stored so you're not tearing the house apart looking for them.
I think this goes along with that Swiss death clean. I think it's Swedish death clean.
Yeah.
Where we look at our things, and we probably have a lot of the stuff that we're going to go over. Like I have flashlights in my home, but they're in like 7 different places. So maybe it's time to put them in one place and like reduce down to 3 instead of 7. We do have things in our homes, and we might just have too many things that we don't even know what we have.
Yeah.
You know, the boxes in the garage type of thing. So this could be one of those practices that's almost like well, the Swedish death clean is actually like kind of nice to do with those that come after you, right? What happens in the afterlife? Those that love us will miss us deeply, right? Those that love us will miss us, or those that love us will be so upset because we left them with a garage full of crap that they don't know what to do with, from experience, right? So yeah, right. So I think that
Or 4.
reducing, not becoming necessarily a minimalist, but just more efficient, responsible with the things that we have. Okay, let's go to our table talk. We have a couple of minutes, so there's going to be questions up here for you, or you can make up your own questions. We're going to try to do a Q&A at the end. So if you want to write a question down, you can for Greg. These are the questions you write down are specific for Greg. Because I'm not the expert here, he's the expert, and so go ahead and take this time and do a table talk. All right, we're going to continue our conversation. So bring those thoughts to a close and bring your attention back to the front. So, what we know is this: every community has a quiet infrastructure. A quiet infrastructure always is kind of the undercurrent of a community. And so people are working within a community, people are driving within a community, people have their favorite restaurant in a community, people know certain people in a community, and it's very organic. And infrastructure is very organic. I think personal readiness starts with that infrastructure. When you start thinking about your neighborhood, you live on this street and you have these neighbors that you know. You don't necessarily know all of your neighbors. You might not know them well. You might know somebody really well that lives 2 doors down. But what about those 2 doors, right? What happened to that door in between? So personal readiness really starts with your personal network and that quiet infrastructure. So what we know from our last week's podcast with Sharia, Jake, and myself is there's been studies done that in disasters, we know that the number one recovery attribute, so the communities that recover the fastest are the ones that have personal relationships involved. People that are involved caring for one another, neighbors caring for one another, people, bosses, employees, whatever that relationship looks like. Those people involved, we don't survive disasters alone, we survive disasters with others, right? In partnership. Neighborhoods, blocks, communities, those are built though before the crisis happens. So this is kind of an assessment, right? If you think about readiness, it first starts with your network and who's in that infrastructure. So would you, for example, I know for a fact that people in disaster, when we had snowfall that was so deep that people couldn't move, and ice, one of the things that we do at Symposium is we always keep the Sherwood shop open. And the reason why is because this is a neighborhood community versus our Tigard location. It's kind of spread out a little more. But people can walk safely to Symposium to get heat and food and drink, right? And so Jake and I, myself and Amanda usually work those days. We don't necessarily require our employees to come in on those days. But we always keep the Sherwood shop open so that people have a place to go. That's a network, right? That's an infrastructure that we could stay close to. But people have used that for heat. People have used it for food, right? And we always have that awareness. So your community, your neighborhood awareness, that's what we're going to talk a little bit about in this section. Where do you see the most success when I was talking about that infrastructure, that relationship?
You kind of stole my thunder there.
Oh, okay,
because
sorry.
That's all right. But you're spot on. It's when you have already had an opportunity to get to know your neighbors, know who possesses what kind of skills, who has specific needs, who's got, who works outside of the house and has got a pet that's locked in their house that may need to be let go if there's something that goes on, who's got maybe latchkey kids at home, or I had, in my old neighborhood, I had a family across the street that had an adult, severely disabled son who lived in their basement. And while they were off at work, Art was at home by himself. And if we had some kind of an event that was going on, somebody was going to need to be able to help him get out.
Yeah.
So, having A, the connection, and B, the understanding of what those needs are, and not just the needs, but also the skill sets. There's kind of the saying about safety in numbers. Well, there's security in numbers too, because you're able to kind of take the skills and capabilities of everyone, and you're much stronger as a group than you are as an individual or even as a single family.
Give me a technique. Walking up to my neighbor and saying, "Hey, I see you have a severely disabled son. If a disaster strikes, what do you want me to do?" seems a little forward.
It does.
Seems a little like almost offensive. So what is a way to do that?
What I'm going to suggest is a program that's available out there. It's one of the programs that we present through CERT and our community outreach program, but it's also available online and there for anybody to take advantage of. It's called Map Your Neighborhood. It was developed by the State of Washington Emergency Management Office, and it is a video-based presentation where you basically are the fly on the wall watching this little neighborhood in Seattle go through this series of steps about getting to know their neighbors, coming up with some basics in terms of emergency plan. You know, whose house are we going to use if we have a big earthquake and we all need to get together? Where are we going to meet? Or after we check our own houses, where are we going to go to gather and go check on our neighbors? Who's got a house that might be appropriate as a care center for any, you know, young children, older adults, disabled people who need some extra care? Can we centralize all of those people in one location so that the others can go out and check on our other neighbors? That program, like I said, it's available online. All of the videos are on YouTube. They're freely available, and you could invite your neighbors to come over and do that presentation. I'm looking at Chris here. I've done that presentation at her home, and it's something that you can do as kind of the catalyst to get your community, your neighborhood talking to one another.
But even sending that information out and people doing it on their own and saying, because honestly, if I had a special need in my home of any kind, and that was presented to me, hey, we're mapping our neighborhood, I would probably speak up. Now that's me. I don't know if everyone would, but I would probably speak up and say, hey, I need that in my life. Yeah,
it's a guided conversation, and I'll share a personal story here.
Yeah, please.
Soon after I finished going through the CERT training, I heard about this program and was really excited about it. I lived in a neighborhood up on Bull Mountain, and I knew like 2 of my neighbors on a street of maybe 24 houses. I decided to host one of these things at my home, and I went door to door. I introduced myself to every neighbor. I handed them a little card with the date and the time, and I think 22 of 24 neighbors showed up. We were in a packed room. I'll tell you, it was a little crowded, but we spent 3 hours just going through this program. Everybody shared information about skill sets, and it's a guided presentation. You break it into sections. So there's ones on skills that you may have, another one on specific needs you might have, another one on equipment you might have. And it was really cool because as people began sharing, they opened up more than just, well, I'm going to have a dog that's alone all day and somebody needs to let him out. But I had one neighbor, a guy named Dale, and he traveled a lot for work. And as we're going through a list of all the equipment, I mean, he had everything. He had the generators and the ladders and the chainsaw and everything. He says, I'm away a lot. If we have some kind of disaster, you have my permission to break into my garage and get anything you need out of there.
Wow.
Now, it was just really kind of a cool offering on his part, but the way that this.
How about when we don't have a disaster? Is he offering the same?
I think at that point he'd rather have you text. But that's the other thing is we also collected everybody's phone numbers, everybody's email addresses, and the presentation actually has like a little roster, so you know who's got kids, who's got pets, who's got people who might have some particular special need. And we all left with that, and we created a Google sheet. We posted it online, and so that everybody in the neighborhood had continuous access to that, and we kept it up as neighbors moved in and moved out.
I mean, that's a huge ROI, 22 out of 24.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's so that tells me 2 things. Obviously, people saw that it was important, obviously, because 22 out of 24 people showed up. But also that people wanted to gather for it, that they weren't just trying to do it on their own and find it. Of course, I'll just look up this information online. They wanted to do it together.
Mm-hmm.
What a great way to get to know our neighbors with a little bit of purpose and a little bit bit of intentionality. I think that's kind of an important caveat there. And a great personal story about that. I think that that Skillshare sheet with our community that Sharia offered last week on the QR code, if you could take the time to write down your skills and what you have, that's just a skill share. That's just a community skill share, not a disaster skill share. But it could be something that could be used in disaster for sure. That, you know, we have, you know, chainsaws and these different pieces of equipment that people could borrow, hopefully safely. So I sometimes have this attitude that someone else will handle it, right? Amanda will handle it. Jake will handle it. Somebody else will handle it. Preston's got that, right? So we have that sometimes that attitude that someone else, FEMA's going to show up when a disaster hits. FEMA's going to show up at my door and personally help me, right? As Preston's laughing in the back, right? So help me get over that.
Sure. Well, first of all, FEMA may show up, but they may show up in 2 weeks.
Right.
So the question that I ask myself is, if not you, then who and when, right?
Right.
And particularly following a disaster, the sooner you're able to connect with your neighbors, the less likely it is that some small thing is going to become a major thing.
Right.
Whether that's somebody who got trapped under the bookcase that fell over and they're now sitting pinned on the floor in their
Right.
living room,
Yeah.
or a gas line broke and is slowly filling their house with explosive gas. You need to be able to respond to those things quickly in order to mitigate the damage that's going to get done,
Right.
both
Right.
to an individual or to property.
So when a fire happens, toxins can be released into the home.
Mhm.
That's why when a house burns to the ground, there is a huge EPA cleanup that has to happen on that property. You know, like a couple feet of the soil removed because the house burns down because toxins are there. So if there is a fire sweep through a neighborhood, there are those issues to think about that we don't necessarily think about. I think before our next break, I'm just going to answer this question because we've kind of already answered the organization. Organizations can help in these aspects. Then correct me if I'm wrong. This community here, the one that gathers in this hall every month for these next conversations, if you find this important, we as a community can do something that prepared, and we can kind of instigate or initiate preparedness as a community. You can bring this back to your workplace
Mhm.
and help your workplace be prepared for some kind of disaster. It's either going to happen at your home, when you're home, or it's going to happen at work, when you're at work. What is that next third space? So because those are obvious, right? At home or at work. But what's the third space? Maybe we can talk about that a little bit. Like, where do you need to bring this information to that you spend like another, portion of your day on or week on a regular basis? Could be your gym. Like, what does your gym have for preparedness? Are they even thinking about preparedness? And maybe go talk to the manager and try to be prepared. What are some other
Well,
organizations?
the third one that immediately pops to my mind is just the transition between home and work, or home
Yeah.
and school.
Okay,
And
good.
that's a matter of, do you have things in your car that allow you to get home?
Yeah.
You talked earlier about your dad and having the back of his car just full of stuff. Well,
Right.
I have a small kit in the back of my car, small enough that it hides down in the wheel well, so it's not taking up my whole trunk. But I keep a pair of boots and a pair of good hiking socks and a water bottle and some energy bars and a headlamp and a few other basic things that allow me, if I happen to be either on the road or maybe I'm at work but I want to get home, it allows me to have the things I need regardless of what I'm wearing when the event happens. It has those things I need so I can get home.
Here's a pro tip. always know what's in the back of somebody's car. The reason why I know that my dad had all that stuff in the car is because I was crossing the Canadian border with his car, and I ended up spread eagle on the car, being patted down and put into a room and questioned and interrogated because of the stuff in the car. Just know what's in the back of the car, right? All right, let's go to our questions and spend a little more time at our tables talking. would. All right, let's move into some tangible application, some actual resources and thoughts. Here's a couple of things so far. We have Map Your Neighborhood, and Map Your Neighborhood actually has some really good examples and some like a format that you've worked through that I just quickly saw. And then there's also this booklet, and if you would put that booklet up, this is the neighborhood. There's a contact list, of course. If you go down to the front page, you could do a front page. Here we go. Building and strengthening disaster readiness amongst neighbors. And so this is a booklet that you could walk through that kind of guides you through. What's really interesting is these resources exist, and this is the first time I've ever even thought about these resources. And I'm 53 years old, and I've lived in Oregon for 23 years. So these resources in Oregon exist for Oregon reasons. And so there's Oregon reasons to have these. Here's an example. Right now, I don't know if you know, yesterday, the wildfires outside of Burns, so it's over there, right? But Greg was just sharing with me that yesterday that was at 25,000 acres. Huge. Now it's 75,000 acres this morning. So, was there a house involved in that? I have no idea. But definitely is ripping through and kind of scary. So, Map My Neighborhood. Here's an example of our Skillshare example. And if you look at some examples that are already there, making kombucha doesn't seem like a skill that's needed during disaster preparedness, but it sure would be nice to have some kombucha when you haven't had some for a while, right? So as long as it, has some spiked value to it. Gardening with native plants, communication, my career, including graphic design and messaging, meal planning, making friends, meditation, one heart practice, communication in my profession, and now I also design graphics and build AI-powered stuff. So right now, those are the skills. Those don't seem like, my skill would be, I can cut down a tree with a chainsaw. I can do some woodworking. I can fix pretty much anything with a wrench and a screwdriver and a handful of tools. It might be taped together, but I can at least fix it. It might not be perfect, but pretty professional. Some of us around the room have those kinds of skills. So there's, I don't want to say soft skills, but there's like computer type skills. There's, physical labor skills. There's tutoring skills. There's all kinds of skills that we have that we might not think, right off the bat would be useful, but I'm thinking about that kombucha ever since I said it out loud. So maybe when I don't have it, I really want it, right? Okay.
Kevin, can I?
Yeah.
It's also, we know who has skills.
We know who has skills.
Who have skills. So like, if someone has the skills, we actually know who has the skills.
Right. We actually know who has them. And ask questions. If you don't know what, I think that the form might get a little bit better here over the next couple of days, because we could have some drop-down menus and some examples and things like that would stir our thoughts. Okay, let's talk about some actual nuts and bolts, boots on the ground.
Sure.
So I have a family of 4. It's my 2 daughters. One is 17, one is 9. My wife and I. And one's in high school, one's in grammar school. We live in a neighborhood. We live on a cul-de-sac. We live in a neighborhood that half the people know each other. The other half don't. So we're probably a typical Sherwood neighborhood.
Sounds like it.
Pretty typical, right? What does use me as an example. What does my communication plan include?
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to break that into 2 parts. Let's first talk about your family and a family communication plan. Unless a disaster happens in the middle of the night or early in the morning, chances are the four of you are not going to be home at the same time. Right? You're going to be distributed.
Daughter,
So-
friend,
right,
school,
right.
whatever.
So you need to have some kind of a plan for your family as to how do you keep in touch and how do you reunify. The elements of that include one, you need to discover or identify an out of area contact. This could be an aunt, this could be a college friend, it doesn't matter who it is, but this is someone who lives far enough away that they're not likely to be impacted by the same disaster as you. So it could be someone that's on the east side of Oregon or Washington. It could be someone on the east coast. Doesn't matter, but just not in the Willamette Valley. Because if you have a big earthquake, that's not going to be helpful.
Okay.
So you identify that person, you reach out to them and make sure they're okay with it, and then you make sure that everybody in your family has that person's contact information downloaded to their phone, and maybe even have, in case of emergency, notations so that when people freak out and they don't remember what Aunt Matilda's name is, they can at least search for emergency in their contacts. So that's step one. Step two is if you do need to get in contact with that person during a disaster, don't try to call them, use text messaging. Text messages are far more likely to be completed. They're what they call asynchronous. You don't have to have someone on the other side pick up the phone. So if you're able to get your text message uploaded to a server, it can be delivered later if necessary, and that message will get through. It also takes a lot less bandwidth so that more people can be communicating at the same time than if people are calling. You also want to be talking about what do you need to have in the way of an alternative place to gather if for whatever reason, let's say there's a wildfire and your house is in an evacuation zone. Where is an alternative place for your family to gather? And we typically recommend having a primary and a secondary. Maybe the primary is within eyesight of your home if it's just your house that's on just your house. In case your house is on fire but not your whole neighborhood, someplace that's visible from your home, but then another place it's maybe one of the kids' schools or someplace that's further away. And then if necessary, we can't go home, our whole neighborhood's being evacuated, we're all going to meet at the school. So have those things lined up in advance. You've got that contact information for your out-of-area contact. Maybe in the notes in your contact, you have those places listed so people don't have to remember them. You want to make sure that you're having as many cues and reminders as possible so that people aren't having to think back to those plans you made 3 years ago and have never had to implement. Now, in terms of your neighborhood, I alluded to this when we were talking about map your neighborhood. Have a couple of places in your neighborhood identified for gathering. One that is we'll call it the neighborhood gathering spot, where everybody that's able-bodied is able to get together and meet and come up with a plan as who you need to check on. And a second place that is your care center, where anybody that's in need of some additional support can be taken, and one or two members of your neighborhood can be there to support them.
I'm writing this down
Okay.
actually because it's really to me really interesting. I'm thinking about my neighborhood, and of course the person that is the most boisterous about I'm going to take care of this neighborhood, and I'm going to like if you have trouble, just hand over to it's my next door neighbor. He's across the street, SEAL Team 1 retired.
There you go.
But it's great to have him, and I don't necessarily need fencing put up around my house and like guards and SEAL team showing up and all that kind of stuff. And he's a little bit that way, so maybe he's not the best for the initial. Maybe he needs to be a part of the secondary plan because it'd be a little bit overwhelming. So the cell phone idea, though, I mean that could go down.
You could.
So what do I do then? I mean, that's probably one of the most common things to go down. The towers are out.
Yeah, all the cell phone towers have emergency backup power on them with multiple days of fuel stored. So they should last for several days unless, an earthquake is so severe it knocks the tower over or it fractures the fuel line to them. But chances are we'll have cell towers available for a few days. That doesn't mean they're not going to be overwhelmed with calls, which is why we suggest using text messaging.
So I can actually get that message to that town person as soon as the whatever happens. So let's say it's not a disaster. Let's just say that out of town person might be a good person just to have for like the non-disaster. I'm thinking about my brother or her sister, you know, having that person that we are just in contact with just on a regular basis of, hey, I'm okay, you know, like checking in type of thing. Seems like just kind of a good practice maybe to have.
It's good to keep in touch with family.
Well, sure, yeah, but also we live so far away from each other nowadays. You know, like we're just states apart. That just that check in might be a good just practice to have when it comes to just on a regular basis. CERT training. If I wanted to get CERT trained, certified, is that for everybody or is that just for like a leader? I mean, what is that? What is that for?
CERT training is available to anyone. You do have to have a CERT organization that's sponsored by your community. In this area, there are CERT programs in Tigard, Tualatin, Beaverton, Hillsborough, and Yamhill County.
But not sure.
Sherwood currently does not have one.
Why?
You need to have the city sponsor it, and they need to budget money for someone to run the program. I know they've tried to start one in the past, and efforts have not been successful.
Okay.
I will tell you that the Tigard CERT has, that their first priority is to people within the city. But if people live in adjacent areas where there is not an active program, they do offer their training to people in other communities. I think Tualatin probably has a similar policy as well.
Sure.
For people online and maybe outside of the area, you can go to FEMA's website and put in CERT, and there's a Find a CERT program near you when you drop down for your state, and then it'll list all of them by county. So it's something people can check out no matter where they live.
I noticed that as we
Hey,
move
Kevin.
into. Oh, we had a question.
I just know that there's an opening for the Tuesday class that started April.
Oh, thank you for
We're
that.
still trying to sign people.
Okay, yeah. So the next, our training happens twice a year.
Okay.
And it sounds like they're just about ready to get, they used to be called fall, and now they're starting in the summertime. So I guess they're calling it summer program, but it's not quite full. So if somebody is interested, it's not too late, but it's getting down to the wire.
So 7 weeks. You said 7 full weeks.
I'll back off on that because it used to be 7 weeks, and now what they do is, I think it's condensed down to 5 weeks because there is an online program that's offered by the University of Utah, which handles a lot of the classroom portions of it, so that they can focus the 5 weeks on more of the hands-on things. It's hard to learn fire suppression through PowerPoint. It's hard to learn how to crib, which is, how do you lift heavy objects off of people that are trapped. So they can really focus on those elements by doing the other elements online.
I think it would be pretty amazing if this community did a CERT training and we actually had these skills as a community. I mean, what a blessing we would be to the community. But also just to have those skills. It just seems like a good skill to have. Very, very practical way to just love another person by lifting a bookcase off their head. Like after it's like, oh, I can't do that. I don't know how to do that. Versus I'm going to do this because I know how. Yeah.
Just to say, it might be an opportune time to bring it back. It lets the doctor Dan Captain
Officer Dan. Yeah, Captain Dan.
Radio station in such weeks. We have some of the things in place that would be a great opportunity to reengage that conversation.
Yeah, because it seems like that there might be, especially the drier we get, just seems like that's probably one of the disasters that can happen.
Sure.
For sure. Ice, during the winter time, seems like it's just a continuous conversation. All right. So, any other resources? What are some other resources? We got Map My Neighborhood. We have the CERT training program, CPR certification. I'm thinking like
Sure,
that.
that's a good one. It's kind of an interesting, almost like an oxymoron, but we do have encourage people to take CPR training. But when we talk about disaster medicine, we don't include CPR training because the motto of CERT is the greatest good for the greatest number of people. And if you encounter somebody that's in cardiac arrest, then all of a sudden you're not looking for somebody that's got a higher possibility of survival. You stop your efforts.
Right.
And so we focus more on triage and identifying and then prioritizing based upon survivability, which is
Well, that's
a little bit of a morbid thought. But
yeah. Sorry, you're done. I got some other stuff to do over here. Well, maybe if there was a large group of people trained, it could be better mitigated.
For sure.
So in school, when I was in school, there was two things that we did. Nuclear fallout because of the Russians, so we would get under our desks and hide, right? Like that was going to do any good.
Yeah.
So we would do it. We would like get under the desk and practice nuclear fallout, and then we would get under the desk and practice the earthquake fallout and the walkout and all that kind of stuff. That happened continually through school, right? The alarm would go off out of nowhere, and we would go into this thing. Now we don't practice that at all as adults.
No.
Right? So how should we practice? Give us a practice.
Well, excuse me.
You're fine.
One thing that I would suggest is once you put together kind of your family emergency preparedness plan, is practice it a couple times a year, and that might mean doing a tabletop exercise. Reach into a hat and pull out a random disaster, and then roll a dice to determine time of day, and then talk through, if this happened at this time of day, where would we be? How would we get back home? If we need to leave, how ready are you? And we'll kind of walk through those steps, and then use that as a way of identifying gaps in your plan. I will guarantee you that your plan will have gaps. It always does. But if you're able to practice it on a regular basis, it will both kind of reinforce what it is that we do have planned and give you a chance to mitigate any of those gaps that you do come across.
And it would be interesting to also put other things in there, like if somebody at home got hurt, what do we do?
Yeah.
If somebody was a robbery, what do we do? Like there's other things within that kind of practice to kind of broaden that, because my kid would probably look at me and go, well, when was the last time I experienced an earthquake or a flood or a fire, But I think that more like a person intruder, or like somebody comes to the door and knocks and it's a stranger. What do we do? So having a broader conversation with that might be really helpful. All right, let's take 6 more minutes, and then we're going to just conclude, have a short conclusion. So take the minutes. You have any?
Before we do that, I have a couple other websites I'd like to encourage people to check out. The Red Cross, if you Google Red Cross Emergency Preparedness, they've got some fantastic resources and some kind of step-by-step guides for putting together a preparedness plan for your family. FEMA has got ready.gov. That's an excellent set of resources. And the state of Oregon has a program called Be 2 Weeks Ready that has a kind of a step-by-step plan for how to get ready on a whole variety of topics. So I encourage you to check out those 3 resources.
Okay. Be 2 weeks ready. Yeah. All right, let's go to our table talks, a couple more minutes, and then we will close it down. If you have any questions for Greg, go ahead and hand those to me. Ross that Greg gave me during our break was this. This is not about having a 100-pound bag of rice in your garage going stale, right? Do foods that your family already likes and has and buys. So if you have, a stack of tuna that you got at Winco or whatever, you have that stack of tuna and you use 4 off the stack, just replace the stack. Like replace what's already there. Or the 25-pound bag of rice, have a backup. Don't sit there and buy a 100-pound bag of rice that's just going to sit there. So that the difference, I think, between preparedness and prepping, that fear-based prepping, is having an overabundance that's just sitting in the garage that's not being used in so even if it's in a sealed 5-pound bucket. Here's one question. I don't know if anyone else has questions, but are there good links for lists to use to prepare? Greg told us.
Yeah, I would recommend Red Cross. If you Google Red Cross emergency preparedness, one of the first links you'll see after you get by all the ads is a guide to putting together a preparedness plan. And they have a really nice, I think it's like a 26-week program that essentially allows you to build up an emergency preparedness kit, including extra food and flashlights and all that. But it just recommends, okay, this week buy an extra jar of peanut butter. This week, get some C-cell batteries or whatever you need for your flashlight. And it's just kind of like step by step, and it's little steps at a time, so you're not outlaying a ton of money. It just allows you to slowly put together that kit, and at the end of the 26 weeks, you're in a good place.
I think that's a great idea to just slowly build this, because when was the last time you went through a natural disaster, right? It's been a long time, but over 26 weeks, I'm sure that nothing huge, the chance of it happening is probably slim, but the chance of not being prepared is great if we don't do anything, right? Yeah. Go ahead.
This is mostly for women, but this is something you can do today, because we typically wear shoes that are not really good to walk long distances or aren't sturdy. So go home, find a little pair of tennis shoes and a little pair of socks, throw it at any car that you have, so that if anything happens, you can put those shoes on and you can walk the distance. Because I just realized a number of people said, this class, I do not want to walk.
Right. So, and that
Easy to start today.
And that applies to smaller things too. So if you ran out of gas or got a flat tire and didn't have the right spare, you have to walk back to a gas station again. Correct. Yeah. That's a good idea.
Good idea.
Got to repeat it.
Yeah. The response was for just to grab a pair of walking shoes that you're not using all the time, but they're decent walking shoes, old running shoes. And you can put in the car with a pair of socks, because we're right now walking around in Birkenstocks and flip-flops and little shoes. And if you ran out of gas, if you got a flat tire, didn't have the right spare, if you had to walk a certain distance or a disaster happened or an emergency, and you had to walk 2 miles, you're not going to want to do that in flip-flops. So to have that pair of shoes is really important for any kind of emergency, really. Yeah.
Great idea.
Any other questions that we have? Any hand raises today? Yeah.
We don't have landlines at home.
Right.
So when the power goes out, I have had my phone there experience before, because even if the tower had a battery, like the substation would talk to me. So what is the likelihood of communication in an emergency room? Or if you said that the towers have a battery or something like that.
They have a generator, yeah. But from my perspective, the cell phone should be looked at as a short-term solution, because if it's a long-term event, the towers are going to go out. And even if you have power to your cell phone, it's just going to be a camera, right? So you might want to think about some other methods of communication. Probably one of the best is ham radios. Ham radios do require you to take a small test from the FCC to get a license. But there are repeater towers on the tops of many of the hills around here. So even if you have a little small handheld ham radio that you can pick up a ham radio outlet in Tigard for $50-$60. And with the help of those repeaters, you can reach a long way with them. And then you just need to have some kind of a way of recharging the battery, you know, a solar charger or something like that. That could be a kind of a long-term solution. And the ham radio community is really about emergency preparedness and is there to kind of help relay messages if you need to get a message to someone.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody for being here. Let's thank Greg for being here with us. Yeah. That concludes our time. Thanks everybody. Thanks to our online community that's listening right now. And with that, we're going to close down. You're more than welcome to grab more coffee or hang out for a little bit and visit with Greg afterwards. Thanks everybody for being here.